Hi, I'm Karen with Hiccup Interactive, and thank you so much for coming to SimFest 2020, as well as, even more so, for attending my talk on my first year in the industry. Essentially, I kind of want to pass on my knowledge and experience so far of being in the industry, how I got where I am, and whatever that I can pass on to you guys to make it a little bit easier or to help you make decisions as you know, you grow more and become a little bit less green. So I want to start off by saying that I graduated from CSU, actually, in 2017 in the fall, and I had my first job at a battery distribution company as a programmer analyst. So that has nothing to do with games. I did a lot of web dev and I did like software engineering for in-house products that would be used to help distribute batteries. And it was not for me. Ultimately, bills need to be paid and I got a degree in CS, so kind of had to do something about that. And it was just kind of something to hold me over until I could find a job within the game industry. I applied to places and I did not get in because I didn't really have the experience that they were looking for, or they kind of got sworn by other applicants as, appealing jobs do. So while I was at this company, I really didn't want to let myself become complacent at the place that I was at. Like, I was still technically doing programming. I was still learning something that I could apply to the companies that I would work at in the future. I was still working on projects and seeing how that goes. But I felt like complacency would be the death of my creativity. So being sure that I continued to stay in contact with the game community and continuing to work on projects kind of help keep me going through this whole situation. So, in order to, keep searching for game related jobs and also to, work on my transition out of this particular company, I started working with I created Hiccup Interactive, which was kind of like my handle for a portfolio. I had spoken to like my professor and things like that about how do I make myself more appealing so that I could get a job at a game company, and essentially they told me don't stop working on stuff. Like, attend game jams, continue programming, work on the type of projects that you want to make at a particular game company, and keep documentation of it. So, essentially, continue working on games. Like, don't get sidetracked by the fact that you've got like a big girl job now. Like, if you want to get to some place, you need to keep with that dedication and keep track of that so that whenever that, you approach that employer, you show that, hey, I'm not just trying to jump ship to something I think would be more fun. I have dedication and interest in this particular job field. So in order to cope with that, since a lot of the programming that I was doing at this job was honestly exhausting for me because, again, it wasn't something that I was passionate about. So whenever that I came home, I kind of didn't want to look at a computer. So I decided to keep working on my board game that I had started in school. And I kept up with that, and I came up with Hiccup Interactive as my portfolio, created a Facebook page, and so I'm working on my board game, and I live in Columbus, and I want to go to an event. So I couldn't go to all the events in Atlanta because it was just too stressful of a drive, and I worked like I worked consistently, and it's 2 hour drive and 2 hours back, so it wasn't practical for me to go to all the events, but I could go to a select few, so I decided to go to Siege. And while I was there, I came up with a game plan of, I'm going to bring my board game and I'm going to run around and ask people to play it and try to make as many contacts and connects as I can. It is so important to, you know, integrate yourself into the community that you want to be a part of. So, being a student, being green, being still small, not really knowing where to go, like just introducing yourself and trying to make yourself memorable, trying to, you know, speak to the people that are interesting to you. Like it's much clearer when you have passion when you're talking to somebody as opposed to just going through the motions of trying to introduce yourself to everyone. So be aware of who you're speaking to and why you're speaking to them. Like make active decisions with like who you want to get to know more, because you never know who might believe in you and that might put in a good word for you, or just like see your resume across the desk and just be like, hey, like I remember that person. They seemed very interested in XYZ and pushing that forward. And as well as seeing other people like you that are doing things. It's so motivating. Like going to Siege and seeing people that were my age, younger, older, all over the place, so excited, and the wonderful eccentric personalities that, the game industry and creative types like tend to cultivate. It was so encouraging and it felt so much more like home. It made it easier for me to keep pursuing this through a job that didn't quite fit for me and keep working to get where I felt like fit me better. So, yeah, while I was there, I asked questions at the conference. I spoke to people that I thought were cool, and I asked people to play my games. And some of the advice that I got from these people were like, you need a business card. um, like, I've met 50 people today, and if I do remember someone, I definitely not gonna remember it purely off of like, oh yeah, you're that one person that had a red shirt. Like no, business card helps solidify that. So if they're like, get a business card, get a business card. Ask them to play my games, try to make some, bit of a memory, something to follow up on. So I decided to make a game plan for some of the people I met. Like the next time I see these people, I'm gonna have a business card. I'm gonna update my game and, try to get closer to being in a place where I can go to more of these events, to speak more in the Facebook groups, to further integrate myself in this area so that I can get closer to the particular goals that I want to achieve. Now, a lot of people that want to be in an industry, either because they feel like they have like a great skill, or they have this awesome idea, or they just know something, or they can do something that they feel like no one else has figured out yet. Ideas are a dime a dozen. um, Everyone's got something that they feel like they know how to do, or that they have the next it thing, but it's about what you as a person bring to the table that makes you interesting. Is it your follow through for what you're doing, your personality, your passion, your adaptability? What is it that you offer to others that make you appealing, that make them want to continue working with you? It's not just a case of, creating something and making money or whatever the case may be. It's also being someone that other people can enjoy to be around, that have similar interests, that are passionate about what they're doing, and making sure that, making memories with these people. So with the people that I spoke to and asked for advice, or maybe I liked their panel, the next time I saw them somewhere, I followed up with these people. Like I spoke to them about like whenever Ron mentioned that like, oh, you should have a business card. When I saw them again, I was like, hey, I saw you at the thing. You probably didn't remember who I was, to be honest, because these people see a lot of like young developers, creators all the time. So to, solidify your memory that you made, follow up with like, hey, last time I saw you, you said I should have a business card. Boom, I made a business card. Would you like it? And that's a way to, break the ice with something. Like, I understand a lot of creative types are kind of introverted. Like, I'm pretty introverted. um, and I get nervous a lot. So, like, just having something that you can kind of hand off and just like, hey, I am this, take my card. Like, that's a little bit of a conversation starter. And the more people that you meet, the easier that it gets. So definitely get in touch with your community. Another way to further your connection with your community is also to attend game jams. Like when I was living in Columbus, it was a bit more difficult for me to get to all the events that are happening in Atlanta. It's 2 hours away. It's far. It's gas money. It's whatever the case may be. Either finding people to carpool with, or set your sights on a big event that you want to go to and preparing for it, and throwing your all into it. So being aware of the fact that you may only be there 3 or 4 events out of the year, but during those 3 or 4 events, you give it your all. You meet people, you exchange stuff, you keep up with them on social media. Follow the social media pages for all the games organizations. That's also a great way to keep in contact with people if you're not able to make it there physically. The community in Georgia is awesome. It's very friendly. It's very like tight knit, and we're very open to also just like letting in people and speaking out and passing on people's information. So how the following step from there, how I got my first job in at least a game adjacent situation. I'm still not admittedly working at a big AAA company, but I'm honestly really happy with where I've been at the last 2 jobs that were, games industry tangential. I feel like those offer an alternate to everyone aiming for big game big game companies, and oftentimes those big game companies are looking for people who have already worked on published games or that have a lot under their belt of things that they produced, so or worked on. So being open to working on game adjacent industries like the casino industry, the VR AR, education, things like that. Like you can still garner the skills and things that help further you along to stop you from being so green, have you a more fulfilled resume than like I want to make a game. Like ideas are a dime a dozen, and it's more important what you as an individual do as opposed to what you think you can do, what you feel your potential is. Employers want you to kind of put your money where your mouth is. I've spoken to a lot of people that either have, their own company and they've hired people, or those that are working within a larger company, and how they go through candidates of that nature. And when it comes to, everyone wants to make games, everyone wants to do this, but what are you actively doing that's documented, that's proof of your dedication to this field? Participating in game jams, going to events, are you following through with the things that you're working on? Are you, if you're an artist, are you continuing to draw? Are you visiting these events? Like every time that I've gone through one of these interviews, they brought up like, so what are you doing in the meantime? How, if you're so interested in being in the game industry, why are you interested in working at this particular place? Like what skills are you planning to obtain here that you don't feel like you can get on your own, or whatever the case may be? So having that understanding of what it is that you want to develop into, understanding that you're not going to get it on your first day on the job, and understanding what your path is to get there, and the certain maybe slight detours or alternate paths that you may have to take to get there, just to keep a continuous um, string of jobs, string of actions that you're taking. Um, Also displaying yourself as you yourself are what you're offering to an employer. So demonstrating what you as a person bring to the company, whether it be follow through, you participate in a lot of game jams, you have set yourself on making this project, you decided you wanted to, as an artist, redraw all of the Marvel characters, and you go through and you do like a 30-day challenge or something. Like doing these type of things, documenting those type of things, having that just be as talking points to show what you offer. Also personality, passion, adaptability. Like be excited for what you're doing. Be excited for the career that you're trying to enter into. No one wants to work with somebody who is uppity and a know-it-all, or that is kind of just like, I just kind of need to make money. I don't really want to like stay here forever, but I just want to make money, and I want to go work for Naughty Dog. Like, come on. Like, we can understand that you want to go to this particular place, but be respectful of the other creators. Like, they are offering you an option to, see how a full functioning project works, see how a full company works, and be open to taking those type of jobs within reason. Of course, like, don't necessarily do something that you don't want to do at all. Still have interest in it, but have a game plan of what it is that you wish to achieve while you're there, for the time that you're there. No one's expecting you to stay at a job forever if you say you want to be a game designer and that's not a position at that job. Like, then it's pretty obvious. But be open and honest about those things. So yes, doubling down on your connection to the community. Actually, how I ended up getting my first game industry job at Eclipse Gaming Systems. It was from a post that was posted in the GGDA channel. One of the people that worked there, James Simpson, he had shared that they were looking for people that wanted to work at this company, and I contacted them and applied, and like, I didn't know James directly, but other people that knew James knew me. So when he's like, hey, do you guys know who this person is? It's like, oh yeah, like, she attends these things, she's interested in the place, she's not just like, floating around and just blindly applying to everywhere. So that also kind of like just comes in handy, just, meeting people, showing your personality, which wasn't the reason I got the job, but it was another talking point of just like, hey, this person. So it's a little bit less nerve-wracking because I was so shaken. Like, I mean, I still knew my stuff when it came to Unity and programming and things along those lines, but at least being like, hey, he brought up the fact that, like, we had a common friend. It's like, hey, this person? Oh yeah, like, I met them at such and such, and that further displays, the dedication to the community, your connection to the community. You're not just tangentially popping in and popping out, going into an interview, it's just like, oh, we at least know the same person. This person thinks you're cool, so you can't be that bad. So that was, you know, something that helped me feel a little bit more comfortable at the situation. As well as whenever that I was there, talking about the things that I was doing. One of the biggest questions that they asked me was, what have I been doing in the meantime while I was at this other job that connects to the game industry? Like, why do you want to work here? What do you want to do? A lot of people that want to get in the game industry because they think it's fun. They feel like it's not a boring desk job. It's not this and the other. But there's still a duty that needs to be done. Like, you're still working towards a goal at a company. There's still seriousness. There's still a lot of people that are putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into what they're producing. And they just don't want someone that just wants to lollygag and have fun. So how is this serious for you? Figuring that out is important. And being able to demonstrate how and why it's serious to you. So the portfolio that I was keeping up with the board game, going to game jams, the different events and stuff that I went to, those are talking points to show that, like, hey, I'm dedicated to this particular area. It's not just, you know, a game to me. So, like, what have I been doing? Proof of what I've been doing. They asked for projects that I had worked on before to see that, like, I knew what I was doing and that I could talk about what I was doing. It wasn't just that I got a degree and I worked at a big girl job and therefore I deserve to be here. It was more so like, what makes me a good team member to be there? What do I bring to the team that I could offer? What is it that about me as an individual that can, you know, add something substantial to their company? Keeping a running portfolio that's accessible, that's visible for people to, you know, go into and see what you've been working on, what you've been doing is important for employers to see why you would why you're a better fit there than someone else. Um, so not only sharpening your skills, but just, you know, presenting yourself in a way that is appealing for other employers is extremely important. Making a business card isn't something that everyone has, but it's such a simple thing to create that makes a lot of difference. It's easier to remember someone when you have like a physical thing that has their name and information on it than just like, oh yeah, I saw this one person there and we made a joke, and that's I'd probably let them work for me, but I don't remember their name, so whatever. Regardless of how simple or complicated it is, having some way to identify yourself makes it all the better. Like my first business card was this. It says Hiccup Interactive on the front, and it says Karen Williams, game programmer and developer on the back, and it has like my connection information. It's very simple. It's that's all that they need. Like those are things that further solidify you within an employer's mind. That makes you stand out a bit more than the other person that may be coming in. So another thing is at a lot of these events and stuff within a community, those could potentially be employers or coworkers or whatever the case. Like the Atlanta community is kind of tight knit. Like we're definitely growing. We're expanding and so on and so forth, but a lot of people like know each other, and meeting people and making even just like a minor memory is something that, you know, makes a little bit of difference, and doubling down on the memories that you make with people. Like continuing with my follow through stamp that I'm trying to convey. The siege that I went to when I was working at the battery distribution company, I brought my board game that I had worked on, and I ran around and I told people to play it, and I talked about it, and I got a lot of feedback, and so on and so forth. So within that first year of me working at Eclipse, and now I'm living in Atlanta, and I'm at a game company, I wanted to keep with my follow through with my Hiccup stuff and the board game that they had seen that previous year. And I presented that in a digital game that I was there while I was there. And got a lot of follow up from people that had remembered the game. They might not have remembered me completely, but it's like, oh yeah, you had this game and this was interesting and so on and so forth. And that was an extra, double down of solidifying your place in a community. You created something that someone remembered, which is an awesome feeling. Um, so, and following up with that, that's awesome. And, seeing people who I thought really didn't think much of my little game whenever that I was running around at Siege that first year screaming at people, being like, oh, I like that you changed this thing. Like, I like that this does this now. And like, they remember. And that feeling's awesome. So seeking out those tiny victories as well is something that helps keep you going forward. And also, keeps you relevant within their memory as far as if you're going to become an independent and you want to sell what you're making, you want people to purchase it, keeping in mind like their feedback, their experiences is something that, builds your customer base or something like that. So at Siege 2019, my board game Malintent ended up winning for best design, and it was awesome and it felt great, and it, felt like being validated for something that like I made and I worked on and I showed people. And so from there, I decided to make the decision of Hiccup Interactive is slowly forming into something. That's where I decided that I would file for Hiccup Interactive to be an LLC to protect what I'm working on. And you should get one later though. You want to protect what you're creating. It's your baby. Take pride in it. Also, it adds an extra layer of legitimacy whenever it comes to looking for funding, grants. Depending on what you're working on, you can actually get like research grants or government funding, depending on the type of game or experience or project that you're working on. So legitimizing yourself further by going through the legal hoops will make that a lot easier for you than pursuing it as a private entity. So that's something that you should take into consideration. It's not free to get an LLC, but it's not extremely expensive. And it's something that can be further expanded on and further fleshed out as you develop more as a full-on independent company. So, yeah, ultimately, I just wanted to give a little bit of a chit chat about my experiences, what I've gone through so far, how I've taken my first baby steps into the community. By no means by no means am I a professional now. I'm still very much learning and growing and so on and so forth along with everyone else. And if my experiences can make it a little bit easier for someone else, then all the better to it. You've got to put work in order for your goals and desires to mean something. You sometimes got to take a little bit of a longer trail to get to where you're going, but just don't stop moving forward. And reaching out and building the community, getting into the community, and familiarizing yourself gives you that much more help with furthering yourself and your career and where you want to go and where you want to be. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to me. I'm also open to help out however that I can to talk more directly or intimately about anything that I've gone over or any other questions that you may have. So thank you. And have a good SimFest. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. Excellent stuff. If you have questions, please ask them in chat or in the Discord, the SimFest Discord. You can do it there as well. We will have Ms. Williams in our Discord chat in one moment. Great presentation, lots of good information. Always great to hear from people who are in the industry and who've just done that transition so many other people are looking to do. So as we wait for cameras to work and kick in, go ahead and post your questions, tweet out any good comments you have. All right, we're going to transition, even though for some reason the video's not coming up. We'll hope to see that video pop up any minute now. Not sure why it isn't. But if you have questions, please ask them. All right, let's try this again. I think we have Karen now with us, at least by voice.
All right, let's try this again. I think we have.
Karen, can you hear us? We're all broken up for some reason.
I can hear you guys.
There we go. There we go. There we go. All right, we have some questions in chat. So let's go ahead and jump into the first one from Ken Martin. How nervous were you about stepping out of your job at the battery company and into the career of your dreams? How did you overcome that worry?
It was extremely nerve-wracking for sure. I kind of
Put it into the perspective of I didn't want to be stuck there. Like I said before, I felt like complacency would be like the death of my creativity. And I didn't want to feel like I was dragging myself to work every day. And honestly, just kind of like putting myself around people that I felt like I did want to work with, like whenever that I went to Siege and seeing those people and excited about the things that I'm interested in as well, it kind of helped encourage me to like, take the deep breath of like cutting off from the job I got straight out of college to explore other options. And it worked out in the end for me, so I was fortunate for sure.
Excellent. I have a feeling that part of the reason we're not seeing Karen's camera is because some other
Yes.
app has grabbed it. I have that issue with Discord and the camera often. Blanton Whitworth says, I felt this on a spiritual level. Great talk. What did you use to display your portfolio?
No, I can't.
And how did you get those interested to see it?
Hello?
Are you hearing us? Uh-oh. Let's see here.
There we go.
Are you able to hear us, Karen?
I think. Okay, I'm good. I hear you.
There we go.
Technical difficulties.
Understood. So Blanton Whitworth says, I felt this on a spiritual level. Great talk. What did you use to display your portfolio, and how did you get those interested to see it?
Actually, what I used to display my portfolio was just like I made a Facebook fan page, and kind of just since those are free and simple to use, and I can kind of just throw over whatever stuff. And then from there, I used I created a website for myself once I got like more content situated, and started using that as more of my base place of where I set up all my stuff and where I spoke about everything. Also just using social media, Instagram, Twitter, things like that, even though I'm not really good at updating all the time, but it is a constant place for someone that is interested in whatever that I'm doing and what I have going on to refer to. So that's a nice option as well to kind of carve out a place that has your name attached to it and is a constant location for them to go refer to you at.
All right. Good question, Blanton. Another question for you. You graduated from the Columbus State University program. CSU is putting on SimFest. what do you think were the most important things you learned at college once you got into your jobs in the game industry? What were the best things they taught you, the most valuable things?
I feel like my problem solving skills, like the way that I approach problems, was probably the most important thing that I learned, especially with, me um, working at like a battery distribution company using software engineering, things like that, like figuring out ways for how I could apply my skills or expertise that I learned like with a focused lens on game programming and object-oriented design and so on and so forth, and how I can use the skills that I'm learning at this new location to apply it to a different context within the game industry. Also, as well as like how through the different lenses that and problem solving skills and whatnot, to apply that to making different types of games, kind of just being a bit more flexible and adaptable and on my feet with whatever that is presented in front of me, so that I'm constantly gathering information that I can use for games that I'm working on, for design, mechanics, or whatnot. So I felt like that was probably what I treasured the most, which is kind of looking at problems from different angles that pure textbook stepping through tutorials or whatever the case would not have clearly taught me.
That's a great testimonial for CSU if you picked up those skills there. Dean Borg has a good question. How has making a studio changed how you approach design and interacting with community members? Does it make you feel more professional, or is it the same stuff, just a different day? And I'd like to follow that up with another question about, are there challenges with both having your own studio and working for somebody else's studio?
Okay, so it does feel a little bit more, I guess, professional in a way whenever that I have this extra handle that I'm going under. It's good to like separate yourself from your intellectual property, your studio, or whatever the case may be. Have it be its own entity that exists as itself. Like you're still like, it's like I am Hiccup Interactive, but at the same time, Hiccup Interactive can stand on its own like feet as far as like where it is and how things are. It's not completely dependent on just my face or whatever. So having the studio change kind of like also had me approach it a lot differently, because like in my personal life, I'm really bad about like posting and updating and documenting what I'm doing. But if I'm through the lens of, well, I'm a company now, like I need to let people know what I'm doing. I need to follow up on what they're asking. It's not just like, a friend that's like forgiving of the fact that like, I haven't updated in a year and a half, but you know what I'm doing. Like, no, it puts it in a different context. I don't want someone to look up Hiccup Interactive and see that that company hasn't been doing anything for a year and a half. Even if Karen Williams, for, life purposes, pandemics perhaps or whatever, maybe that's got something else going on, but it as a company is still, producing things, doing things. It's poking its head around. So it puts it in a different lens, and it kind of made it a bit more real and official for me than me kind of feeling like the small fry Karen Williams that just got out of college and hoping that someone will read my resume and get back to me about it, As far as, what was the other question? I
Do you have any
that's
issues with having your own studio and working for someone else's game studio? For instance, are there worries about do they ever want to own your personal IP or anything like that? Or does it support each other pretty well?
Yes. As far as that, like it is a little difficult, managing the time between the two. Um, I kind of like set myself to like Hiccup Interactive has the weekends and during the weekdays are primarily like my job stuff. But an advantage of like once I got to working within a company that uses the same methodologies, technologies, like I use Unity at work. So it's a lot easier for me to transition from using Unity at work to using Unity with my personal game projects whenever that I got home, as opposed to whenever I was working on like web dev and in-house technologies that I can't extrapolate that back to my home with like the specific things that they were using. So finding a job that at least like it's closely related to whatever that I'm doing, it's easier for me to mentally transition. Um, Being sure that as far as like property owning and things like that, like I speak about what I'm working on with my coworkers and my company and stuff. They haven't ask for like a cut or anything like that. I'm not like using their hardware, things like that, or something that might muddle the lines of like stealing ideas or whatever the case. It's kind of just like an extra support system. Like they check in and just like, oh, like what are you doing? Like they're very supportive. They understand that like what I'm doing outside is still like important to me, but I'm still doing what I need to do within my workplace. So they offer me extra advice, like business advice that I wouldn't, normally have access to. They're kind of one of my first like play testers, showing them whatever that I have going on. It's been really great to have like that at my company to show those things, but also like still be able to have this for myself and them still being respectful of the fact that I have these other things going on outside that aren't necessarily pulling me away from it, but are still something that's important to me. And I guess that also kind of goes along with being around, individuals and others that understand and appreciate whatever that you're working on.
Great. Ben Sandfelder in chat, who also has his own studio, by the way, says excellent advice. Let's go back to the skills you've picked up through the years. What was the most important skill you found that you had developed outside of your classes that served you best in game development?
I would say kind of being able to, I guess the skill that I kind of picked up accidentally was kind of like being able to see a game anywhere. I guess, I guess not exactly a game, or make anything into a game, I guess you can say. Especially whenever that I was working at the battery distribution company, there's no really splitting hairs there. It's not much of like a creative medium there. It's a very straightforward like software development focused documentation, so on and so forth. Um, so trying to see about how the programming patterns that I was using there, how I could use those type of patterns within a game context, like me using SQL there, like perhaps figuring out how I could use SQL for the games that I would be working on in the future. Being able to extrapolate the skills that I'm learning at a particular focused job and pulling those out to see how they could apply to whatever that I'm doing was something that I didn't actively plan on learning, but it's something that I kind of like pulled out a lot, especially whenever that I was at the casino gaming company. They still it's still a game, but it's in a more limited definition of the sense. How I can say, hold the things that I know from Dungeons and Dragons and apply that within the context of a slot machine or something like that, for example. Or whenever that the battery distribution company, they want charts and things to be displayed in another way. Thinking about how, UI UX within a game environment, like having that back and forth compatibility, I guess, with seeing games and non-game things and seeing non-game approaches into game things, kind of was a great skill that I picked up and was able to kind of like apply within these different contexts to make it still relevant to me to, keep growing on the skills that I'm developing while I'm learning.
Excellent. Kind of a related question from Blanton Whitworth. You mentioned that sometimes you have to take the long road when it comes to reaching your dream profession. If you were to go back and speak to your younger self, what would be the advice you'd give to yourself about preparing for the process?
I would definitely say, like, don't stop believing in yourself. Like, when all the chips are down and everything else is going on, sometimes you might need to be your biggest fan. And there were times whenever, say, I was at the battery distribution company and I just wasn't feeling it. And there were times where things were difficult for me because I was learning a different type of programming that I wasn't used to. Web dev is very different from game development. And there were times that I kind of got caught up on things, and I felt like because I wasn't doing good at this location, this area, that meant that I wasn't doing good in general. That like, oh, if I were to try to reach outside of this field, like if I'm having trouble here, would I have trouble if I were in a place that I wanted to be? Um, you know, being able to acknowledge that like I'm at a different learning curve at this particular place, and reminding myself, motivating myself to like, once I'm in my element, things are a lot, straightforward. It's different whenever that there's passion backing whatever that you're working on. It's a little bit hard to learn how to figure out all these different things whenever you just aren't ready. So, let me try this thing. That will fix that. So, being aware that like I might need to be my biggest fan during some of those low points where I'm still kind of stretching my legs out, getting through some of the green spots. Oh, hey, there's my radio.
Hey! Excellent.
I am here.
Excellent.
All right. Yeah. Just that hits it.
Very good. Zane Everett, follow-up regarding to the studio, and this is great advice for anyone who does contract work on games. I use my company as my front to contract our development services. Zane isn't working for you. In Zane Games is. Yeah, it's a great distinction and very important bit of legal protection as well. All right, a question from Bean Borg. 1 year in the industry. What have your highs and lows been in that year?
All right. For some reason, my headphones aren't syncing up properly. We're good. But yeah, I heard the question. So, my highs and lows. I would definitely say that my high is, winning like best design for my board game. Like that was kind of revolutionary for me in a way. And also like whenever that I was presenting at Siege 2019 and people that recognized me from the year before when I was running around with my board game, like becoming a familiar face and feeling like I'm I'm finding my home, my niche, getting on the IGDA board. That just it feels like, I've found a stride, and it feels good, and I'm enjoying it. Like, I'm feeling a lot more at peace at what I'm doing for my day job, even though it's not the exact title that I want to be. Like, I want to be a game designer, but I'm not unhappy with what I'm doing, what I'm accomplishing, and where I'm going. There are ambulances. So, yeah, like, that's definitely, like, been a huge high for me. It's just like these little crossing out some of the discouragement that I may have felt before, of just like, oh, maybe this isn't the right area for me. Like, I once I found the right place to be, it kind of, like, fell a bit more into place. As far as lows, those were definitely trying to figure out, like, my footing with some stuff, and, like, aside, pandemic shenanigans aside, um, the lows were where, I didn't know what to do. I wasn't sure if I had fit in yet, or that I presented myself well, within an interview, on my resumes, feeling awkward at some of the events that I went to, but trying to uh, basically narrow down those feelings as more temporal instances instead of, like, eternal mindsets, kind of helped me get past some of those things. Because, like I said before, I only needed one yes to get started on being in the industry, and also acknowledging that even if I don't have a job, I'm still part of the industry. I'm still at the events. I'm still a creator. I still, talk about these things. I'm here. Um, so yeah, the shaky footing, but I.
Footing seems pretty confident right now. All right, chat. We've got time for one more question from chat. Before we get to that one, Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you are doing now with the IGDA? What your new role is?
So right now, within the IGDA, I am its latest member. I got elected in December. Because of a lot of stuff that's going on with the world right now, I would be, like, planning events, getting in contact with, like, different places to set up those things. So for the moment, we've kind of been shifting to our game plan for how to, digitize our meetings, our connections, bettering how we're relaying to other individuals so that we can spread out our connection to the community. A big thing that the IGDA is shooting for is, more solidarity between the small indies and the bigger companies, connecting those people, spreading, our goal of, we are here in Georgia, and we are creating things, and we are, awesome at it. So, working on those type of initiatives, uh, I really wish I could have planned up, like, I wanted to do, like, a in-person event, but perhaps in the future we'll get that on with. But yeah, that's primarily what I've been doing with the IGDA for now.
Someday we'll be in person again. All right,
A lot of learning, honestly.
last question from Discord. Karen, how's your cat doing? That's from Rado Bondo.
Beans is awesome. I think she's asleep on my bed right now. But she is awesome. She is really, like, keeping me motivated with getting through some of this stuff. She's really been the driving force of Urchins and Ink, and what I should do about, game mechanic decisions and things like that. If it wasn't for her, Hiccup Interactive may not have made it through.
Excellent. Nick is implying that she really is the cat's pajamas. All right. Thank you very much, Karen. Great presentation. Lots of invaluable advice. Join Karen at 5 for the motivational rants, if she hasn't motivated you enough to work in this industry. And now, stay tuned for Zane Everett getting ready to talk to us about dots. See you all in a few minutes.